My dad was in the Marine Corps, got hit in the side of the head. He slowly goes from 165 down to 86 pounds, full quadriplegic in a wheelchair. Dr. Ian Grassam takes an x-ray of my dad. His atlas is subluxating his spinal cord, says, I can fix you. He starts adjusting my dad, obviously. My dad gets better, goes to chiropractic college. When we built this, one of the things we were thinking about was, imagine if Dr. Ian was thinking about our payments getting collected at the front desk instead of focused on the adjustment when my dad was in the office.
Hey, and welcome to the Dominate Healthcare Podcast. As we always say, we know you have to dominate and not just participate. It's a sick world. God knows what's coming next. So we got to make sure we're leading the education and the care and the way when it comes to what's going to be required for this world to stay sane, safe, and healthy. I'm here with an old friend, Jonathan McAlees. Welcome, Jonathan.
Good to see you, Dr. Ben.
So I knew, your dad, your brother. I was involved with your whole family. Real briefly, just share, your history in chiropractic. So you not only run Fortis, but you have a great, rich history in chiropractic.
Yeah. So my brother's a chiropractor. My dad's a chiropractor. My mom's dad is a chiropractor as well. Dr. Sid Nathanson, his brother, Dr. Mike Nathanson, was a founding member of Life University. My mom's sister is a chiropractor. My dad's brother is a chiropractor. We've married into chiropractic families, but it all started, the short story. My dad was in the Marine Corps, got hit in the side of the head, landed on his head, knocked out cold, goes to the infirmary. They don't know what's wrong with him. He slowly goes from 165 down to 86 pounds, full quadriplegic in a wheelchair. They told him he'd never walk again. Goes home, destined to be, in a wheelchair. And my grandmother, his mother at the time, was seeing a chiropractor for her Addison's disease. She noticed when she would get adjusted, her adrenal glands regulated better. And so she could take less medication. So she finally convinced my dad to go see that chiropractor. That chiropractor was Dr. Ian Grassam. Dr. Ian Grassam takes an x-ray of my dad. His atlas is subluxating his spinal cord, says, I can fix you. He starts adjusting my dad, obviously. My dad gets better, goes to chiropractic college, starts following Dr. Jimmy Gregg, John Hoffman, and Ian Grassam around. And at a DE seminar back in the 80s, he ends up meeting my mom, who was working there at her dad's office. So, I would not be here if it wasn't for chiropractic. So I actually owe chiropractic my life, because my dad would have been dead a long time ago if it wasn't for Dr. Ian.
Wow. Yeah, Dr. Ian, for people who don't know, he's an absolute patriarch, an icon in chiropractic. He's went to be with the Lord, but he was my main mentor. He's the guy that I followed, which is why I laughed when you said that was your dad's chiropractor. And every name you rattled off is somebody who's a rich part of our history in chiropractic, and you're connected through the bloodline with all of them. That's pretty amazing. The other thing that's really interesting is that many people don't realize that the original chiropractors, nobody went to chiropractic school because they thought it was a good idea or that it would be great to be this type of doctor. They went there because it had saved their life, or somebody in their family, had some hopeless condition that the whole institution had given up on, and were saved by going to a chiropractor from some egregious, deadly condition or something that was ruining their life. And so they said, wow, I want to go do this, because there wasn't money in it. You had all the quackery campaigns of the 60s and 70s. You had to really want to do this. So that must have really impacted you growing up in a home where there's that much chiropractic, but chiropractic wasn't something for neck pain, backaches, and strains. It's for saving people's lives.
Yeah, my dad, one of his first patients was a little girl who was deaf from birth. And, adjusting her gets a call Christmas morning that she started hearing one day. So I grew up as a little kid just in this world. My dad delivered us at home. I've been adjusted my whole life. And so I grew up going to, FCA and DE seminars. And so I grew up around chiropractic. Dr. Jimmy Gregg was kind of like our uncle. And so I grew up around these legends, not knowing who they were when I was just a kid running around the house. but fortunate now to obviously know who all these amazing men were.
So it's a great segue, especially talking about that group. It's a great segue into Fortis and why you created it and why you're so passionate about it. And it's, I know, grown quite large since we first met you.
Yeah.
Though that group of doctors you listed out, because they were so focused on getting people out of wheelchairs and bringing back their sight and their hearing and curing their cancers with, an Atlas adjustment, they were awful at business. So I was taught by them, and you were literally, there was a group of us just going out and giving it away. And there was just chaos in the office. Profit wasn't there. Once insurance went away, it was devastating to a lot of people. So it was a pretty rough transition to go from that era to, where we are today, just in terms of business. And then that group, of course, you're trying to get people on lifetime plans, but how do you manage the economics of that? So there's a lot of dysfunction there. So share with us, sort of in the midst of all that, where you envisioned the company and as a solution to saving the world, but by managing the business and the economic side of things.
Yeah, so when we first started, we actually started in chiropractic with one of your old groups. And so it started, we showed up and we realized, okay, let's try this technology. Let's try this technology. And none of them worked. It was a square peg into a round hole, because what happens in a chiropractic office is very different than what happens in any other business where you're running recurring payments. Typically, you either just collect a certain amount and it's done and over with, or we're going to set up a recurring, it runs every month. And when you don't pay, we shut your service off, a la like a Netflix, right? But a chiropractic office doesn't work like that. There's lots of nuance and complexity. And then you're also dealing with a family, and they might have financial hardships and all these different scenarios that occur. So that is when we decided to build our own payment gateway. So this was back in 2011, 2012, that we started building our own payment gateway. And what we realized as we started boarding offices was there's tons of nuance that occurs in a chiropractic office. So oftentimes you've got your corrective care phase, right? So someone's coming in, they're coming in 3 times a week, then 2 times a week, then once a week, right? And that might happen over whatever period of time is required to, get that correction. And then often someone goes on to maintenance care after that, right? And so then you're switching them from an installment plan to a true recurring plan. And so even within the installment plans, as an example, you've got someone can't pay. They have financial hardship. Can you move my payment date? Can we skip this month's payment? They walk in and want to pay with cash. It's the new year is coming upon us. So their HSA card gets renewed, and they walk in and they've got $500 on their HSA card. And there are all these different things that happen within an office around payments that we want to reduce the number of clicks around, because it's all about
and that's,
efficiency.
It's not that just chiropractors are bad business people. That's complex. That's a really complex model to have to manage, with all these different options for payments and care plans flipping over and HSAs and credit cards and going from intensive care to maintenance care. Like that's a hard thing to get your arms around. So what have you guys done to try to solve that?
Yeah, so we really try to use technology to solve it all, right? Whether you have staff turnover, which is going to occur, we don't want payments being missed, right? When we built this, one of the things we were thinking about was, imagine if Dr. Ian was thinking about our payments getting collected at the front desk instead of focused on the adjustment when my dad was in the office. And so that's how we think about it. I don't want the doctor worried about whether payments are getting collected. We want the doctor focused on the adjustment. The technology will take care of the payments, and the staff can run all the reports to ensure, whatever they need to look at is happening. And so we've created all the technology so that no matter what patient needs arise, you can easily have that flexibility to pull different levers to, accommodate your patients so that they stay in getting care and they're not worried about the payments.
It was great when we first met, and some of the other technologies we were seeking out at the time. We're growing all these clinics to hundreds a week, but as you mentioned, none of the technology matched up with what we were doing in practices. Nothing matched up with corrective care, nothing matched up with care plans, nothing matched up with making sure you weren't seeing a bunch of people and not making the money, that you end up waking up, as I say, waking up dead. You wake up and find out, oh my God, look at all these uncollected payments. And you have back in the day, you were constantly needing to send people to collection agencies because you just wake up and realize you hadn't been collecting any money.
Mm-hmm.
So, you guys came in and solved in a real chiropractic world what we needed to do for actual making sure suddenly all the sins of the past that our patriarchs and matriarchs had created for us were corrected. So what are some things you still see as you come in to flip this around? What are some of the problems you see chiropractors are having, mistakes that they're making or continuing to make that you guys have solved? Because again, I'm talking to hundreds of chiropractors a week. There's still a lot of them that haven't obviously figured this out.
Yeah, one of the big things we still push. So we push everyone to store cards on file. We say, look at what Amazon is doing, right? There's a reason why Jeff Bezos built the one-click checkout button. They know what they're doing, right? So we call it frictionless payments. So you want to create the same for your patients, right? Why would you not copy what the biggest retailer is doing? So make it frictionless for them. If the card's on file, they don't think about making that payment when they come to the front desk. They're not going into their purse or their wallet to pull out their card. So it's on file. It's really, really easy. Recurring payments, we still see it to this day. So I remember when we met, everyone had their black book. They had the names written down, the recurrings, and sometimes people were plugging away on a terminal. We don't see as much of it today, but we still do see it where I'm like, why would you stop anyone at the front desk to take a payment? Set them up on a payment plan, and that way they're in and out. I still get adjusted every week, right? And I pay up front, and because I want to be in and out, I've got work to do and places to be. And so no one wants to stop at the front desk every time they're going. And then even with new features that we have, so like quick invoicing, so you can text payment links to your patients, right? So they owe a back balance. You meet someone at a screening and they're like, oh, I don't have my wallet on me. You're like, great, I'll text you a payment link before you come into the office. And so there are lots of ways that you can do it. You can add payments to your website now. We have an inventory management platform. There are all these various tools that we have for offices to be able to succeed and make taking payments easier in the office.
That's really good. Tell us about the inventory management, because most clinics now, you're selling supplements, but what a disaster it usually is. There's 6 on the shelves, staff takes a couple home, patient steals one. Oh, look, we're out. Let's reorder. Hardly anybody's really keeping up. And so we see, we may have had these gross sales of X amount of dollars in supplements, but the question always is, did you actually profit anything based on loss and inventory? So what are you guys doing there?
Yeah, so we actually just a few months ago launched an inventory management system. It was probably the number one request that we got. We are a payments company. We really like to stick in our lane, but we do technology. And since this is technology and you have to take a payment with it, we thought it fit. And so we built a full-fledged inventory management system. So barcode scanning enabled, you can scan, check out products, it stores your inventory, it alerts you when inventory drops below a certain count. You can do that at a per product level. You can put in your wholesale and retail price. It's easy to update inventory on one screen where you can just go, product by product and update the inventory. It obviously counts down the inventory. It gives you reporting around it. And this is very, very early on. We've got a whole development team that we've built around it. Our iPhone and Android app is getting ready to launch for that. And then eventually we're going to do some really cool, secretive things that we have coming. So it's going to be a lot easier for offices. We really want to eventually do everything through this application to make it easy. So you can run your sales, run your products, and get all of your reporting out of a system that's not tied to a computer to make it easier.
That's good. Last question I've got. So I've got these really good friends. They're both University of Virginia Darden School of Business graduates. They're extremely successful, but they actually made their money originally in the yogurt industry. So they ran yogurt shops. They got to 3 locations before selling. And I always thought, that's amazing. You're a great business person when you're making money on a transaction that's $5, $6 with the cost of goods included. If you can make a lot of money doing that, I mean, what are they clearing? $2 a serving or something, and yet
Right.
they became really wealthy. That's a strong business practice to get to that point where on low dollar amounts you've kept enough profit to again be successful. But chiropractors, certainly the profit margin is much bigger. I mean, the cost of an adjustment may only be a few dollars, but you could charge upwards of a couple $100 a visit. So what have you seen the best chiropractors do, utilizing your system and how that system plugs into other things like their EMR or anything like that to make sure that they truly are generating profit? Because, going back to our historians in chiropractic, all the people that your dad knew and he mentored under, like myself, that was a problem for them. They were not profiting. And so they had big practices. They stood on big stages and taught all of us, but the reality of their practices was that it was really hard to make sure you're making money. So what are some best practices you could leave us with?
We still see the biggest practices tend to be the wellness practices, right? And so the ones that, we always say your best customer is the customer you already have, right? And so it's very difficult to go acquire a new customer, but to keep an existing customer is much easier. And so we see the docs doing really well that not only convert someone through corrective care, but then convert them through to wellness care, right? And they set them up on a recurring plan, and that patient comes in at whatever schedule, once a week, once a month, whenever they're coming in, and that recurring payment never ends, right? It is always turned on. And what a great business model, right? How many businesses look for recurring revenue, right? That's kind of you go into the private equity world, that's everything they want, right? Is recurring revenue. And doctors can have that with their patients, right? And they get better. They know they need to stay better. And so they keep coming in. So we see that, right? A second thing I would say is selling something else to an existing customer. So, right, this is where you can be experts in health and nutrition, supplementation, sleep, diet, exercise, right? All of those ancillary products that fall right in line, because as we saw with COVID, right, doctors are not going to teach, you're vitamin D deficient, right? That's not what they learn in school, as we all know. And so they're usually only going to hear that from their chiropractor. And so we see those doctors do very well.
Awesome. Yeah, and these are certainly all principles we espouse. You were good enough to be there at our Christ-centered chiropractic event and help sponsor us and keep that mission going. And that's the idea is, customer lifetime value, obviously recurring revenue, people staying forever. Just like you noticed, it wasn't just that your dad got adjusted, but here you are, not only still a chiropractic patient along with your whole family, but you're literally in the industry as well as your siblings. That's what we're trying to create. It's not about getting somebody started under care. It's about them staying under care. And the fact that we could have a system like yours to help just the revenue make sense and make it nice and easy for the doctor, all the better. So we really appreciate you guys, not just for the company and that you've been willing to evolve. Like you said, you started it with me when we were just trying to figure out how do we support all these wellness-based chiropractors. And obviously you've brought it to another level. So, thanks for your help.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having us.
For everybody watching, take a look at Fortis. As you build a practice that can save the world, you need to build a business behind it. And as we said, we can't just simply participate. We have to dominate. And so that means you got to be economically viable and sustainable as well. Bless you all. And remember who you are.